They thought you'd beg. They thought you'd break. They were certain you'd collapse into desperation the moment they pulled away, because that's how the game had always gone. But this time, nothing. No call, no message, no confession in the middle of the night. Just silence. And that silence, cold, steady, unshaken, cut deeper than any outburst ever could. Because when someone loses your reaction, they lose their script. And when the script is gone, so is their control. This isn't just silence, it's a mirror. It forces them to see their ego, their manipulation, their games, without your voice to soften the truth. And in that reflection lies the quiet destruction they never saw coming. Today, you'll see why your calm will always strike harder than any explanation. Start this journey now, like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. Drop a 1 if you've ever felt the pull to react, or a 2 if you've learned the power of holding back. And stay with me, because what comes next will make you see silence in a way you never have before. Let's begin. Part 1. Silence cuts deeper than words. They expect you to speak, to defend yourself, to explain your side until your throat runs dry. They expect the noise, the tension, the volley of words they can twist and turn to keep you in the fight. But what they least expect is the quiet. Not the sulking kind, not the cold shoulder game, but the kind of silence that doesn't seek to wound. It simply removes itself from the battlefield. And that's the kind that shatters them from within. For many men in their late 30s and 40s, the pattern is painfully familiar. You've lived years reacting to every jab, explaining every move, justifying every choice, as if your worth depended on whether or not they understood. Each reaction was another thread they could pull, another switch they could flick to keep you spinning in place. You became so accustomed to defending yourself that it almost felt unnatural not to. And yet that habit, born from the belief that love and attention are the same thing, was the very thing keeping you trapped. From the time you were young, the message was planted deep. If you don't answer, you don't care. If you don't show up, you're being selfish. If you don't respond, you'll lose them. That conditioning makes it feel almost dangerous to stay silent. So you keep answering, you keep engaging, you keep feeding the fire, hoping that enough explanations, enough clarifications will build a bridge back to peace. But the truth is far more sobering. Every time you react, you hand them the script they already know by heart. And here's the truth most men avoid. Predictability is a lever they'll keep pulling until it breaks you. When someone knows exactly how to trigger you, they no longer see your words as connection. They see them as control points. It's not just about winning the argument, it's about knowing they can make you move when they want you to. As long as you keep playing that role, the game stays alive. But picture this. One day, the man they could provoke with a single word no longer responds. Not a sigh, not a counterpoint, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. No calls returned, no texts answered. The familiar rhythm, the volley of back and forth, simply stops. And the door doesn't slam shut with drama, it closes quietly without ceremony. That isn't just absence, it's a void, a space so still and unfamiliar they don't know how to step into it. And the longer that silence holds, the more they feel the weight of what's missing. This is where Stoic wisdom shines its brightest light. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In that sentence lies the whole truth. Silence, when born from clarity instead of anger, is strength in its purest form. Anger wants to be heard. Clarity doesn't need to be. Anger shouts to prove a point. Clarity speaks in its absence because it knows the point is already made. When you choose this kind of silence, you're not withdrawing to punish them. You're withdrawing to protect the most valuable thing you have, your peace. You're stepping out of a rigged game where the only way to win is not to play. You're reclaiming the emotional real estate you once gave away freely, brick by brick. And that's not weakness. It's the highest form of self-respect. At first, this quiet will feel foreign. You'll hear the phone buzz and feel that old reflex to grab it, to answer, to make your presence known. But then you'll remember, every time you respond without purpose, you give away the very control you fought to regain. So you let it ring, you put the phone down, you step outside, breathe in the air, and realize that the world keeps turning without your immediate reply. And in that realization you start to feel a new kind of strength settle in your chest. Silence isn't the absence of communication, it's the presence of restraint. It's the decision to stop pouring your energy into a well that never fills. And that's what makes it so unsettling to the other side, because they didn't expect you to find this kind of discipline. They expected you to fight, to justify, to keep proving yourself. They were counting on it. And when you no longer give it, they don't just lose your words. They lose the ability to anchor themselves in the certainty that you'll always be there. Over time, this absence becomes more than just a pause in conversation. It becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they are forced to see what's left without you. Their own words, their own actions, their own patterns, without your reactions to soften the edges. Some won't like what they see. Some will try to provoke you back into the role you used to play. But by then, you've already learned the most important lesson. Their understanding is optional. Your mastery over yourself is not. And here's where the shift becomes permanent. You're no longer speaking to win their attention. You're no longer explaining to win their approval. You're no longer trying to control how they see you. Instead, you're mastering the only thing you've ever had real control over, your own mind. That mastery is the quiet strength that shakes them more than any argument ever could. Because the truth is, when you stop playing to their expectations, you break the cycle completely. And when you break the cycle, you break their control. That fracture doesn't happen with a shout. It happens with the kind of silence that needs no translation, no justification, and no apology. And as that silence stretches, you start to see something even more powerful. You didn't just take your voice back. You took your life back, and that's the part they never saw coming. That's the part they can't unsee. That's the part that stays with them, echoing in the space where your reactions used to be. You've stopped playing the game, and in doing so, you've already won. And the next move? It's yours alone to make. Part 2. Breaking the pattern. Breaks their power. The greatest shock you can deliver is not an explosion of words, not a confrontation that burns the air, but the day you quietly stop following the script they wrote for you. For years, they've counted on you to play your part perfectly. You've been the predictable heartbeat of their drama, the dependable actor who never missed a cue. They provoke, you respond. They withdraw, you chase. And every time, the cycle spins on, powered by your willingness to keep the rhythm alive. People who manipulate you don't just hope you'll react. They build their entire sense of control on it. Your reactions feed their ego, reassure them of their influence, and keep them from facing themselves. They rely on you to explain yourself so they can twist your words. They rely on you to apologize so they can dictate the terms of forgiveness. And they rely on you to return so they can feel that no matter how far they push, you'll always come back. But here's the quiet truth. The moment you step off that stage, the whole production collapses. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. When you stop responding, they'll call you cold. They'll label you stubborn. They'll whisper that you're weak. But in reality, you're doing the bravest thing a man in your position can do. You're breaking the conditioning loop they've relied on for far too long." Breaking that loop is more than just ignoring a message. It's dismantling the mental wiring that makes you believe you owe them a reaction. Picture the confusion when the text they sent to get a rise out of you sits unread for days. They keep checking their phone, refreshing the thread, waiting for the music to start again. But the song has ended and you've walked out of the room. There's no encore coming. This is where strategic silence becomes your greatest ally. The first rule is your response threshold. Only engage when the conversation is genuinely aimed at resolution, never at provocation. That means you train yourself to see the difference between an olive branch and bait. The second rule is no anchors. Remove the breadcrumbs that let them track your emotional weather. Stop posting for their eyes. Stop dropping hints they can interpret as invitations. And the third rule is redirect energy. The time and focus you used to spend dissecting their words now gets invested in training your body, expanding your mind, and building something that can't be taken away. The first few times you do this, it will feel unnatural, almost like you're betraying some unwritten contract. You'll hear that little voice in your head urging you to explain yourself, to clear the air, to keep the peace. But that voice is the echo of the role you've been conditioned to play. The more you resist it, the weaker it becomes. And as it fades, something stronger takes its place. The realization that your worth is not tied to how well you play someone else's game. What you're really doing when you break the pattern is reclaiming sovereignty over your own mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." By refusing to participate in the cycle, you're proving to yourself that your peace is no longer up for negotiation. You are no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of provocation. You are the one holding the scissors. And here's what makes this so powerful. It's almost impossible for them to rebuild the control they once had. The old cues won't work anymore. The buttons they used to press now do nothing. The performance they depended on no longer exists. You're not just taking away their power over you, you're removing the illusion that they ever truly had it. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's built in moments. Moments when you let a message sit unread, when you choose to go for a run instead of arguing, when you close the laptop instead of responding to that pointed email, when you choose your own growth over the familiar chaos. Each choice is another brick in the wall between you and the person who once held sway over your emotions. Eventually, they'll try to provoke you again, just to see if you'll break. A sarcastic comment, a subtle jab, a memory dangled like bait. But you'll see it for what it is, an invitation back into a room you've already left. And you won't step back in. Not because you're angry, not because you want to punish them, but because you've learned that your life moves forward best when it's not anchored to someone else's storm. The beauty of breaking the pattern is that it's not about revenge, it's about renewal. You're not walking away from them as much as you're walking toward yourself, toward the man who doesn't need to prove his worth in arguments, toward the man who knows when his silence says more than his words ever could, toward the man who no longer dances to music he didn't choose. And the moment you reach that place, their grip is gone for good. That's when they realize something they never prepared for. You're not just quiet, you're free. And freedom, once tasted, is never surrendered. You've broken the pattern, and with it, you've broken the power they held over you. Once that bond is severed, it's almost impossible for them to weave it back together. And the best part, the life you build beyond that point will be yours alone. No script, no stage, no strings attached. That's the kind of ending they'll never see coming, and the kind of beginning that changes everything. Part 3. The psychological weight of time. Time in silence is not just passing, it's pressing. It settles on the mind like a weight that grows heavier with each day, a pressure they can neither see nor easily lift. At first, they won't notice it. When you stop engaging, they might even feel a strange sense of relief. The noise is gone, the tension is gone, The constant back and forth that once filled the air has vanished, and in those early days they might mistake that emptiness for peace. But that's not what it is. It's the quiet before the storm they never saw coming. Because as days turn into weeks, silence changes shape. It's no longer just the absence of your voice, it becomes the presence of your absence. The mind, left with too much space and not enough distraction, starts to wander back over old conversations. They revisit moments they brushed off before. They begin to question the tone in your last words, the meaning behind your last look. Doubt, at first a faint hum, starts to grow louder. That doubt turns into discomfort. Discomfort hardens into longing, and longing, left unchecked, slips into panic. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." But delay is not just a remedy for anger, it's a mirror for truth. In your delay, in your absence, they are forced to meet themselves without you there to absorb the blows, smooth the edges, or provide the reassurance they once took for granted. You were the buffer between them and their own reflection, and now, without that shield, they're faced with a version of themselves they may not like to see. It starts subtly. They scroll back months in your messages, telling themselves they're just curious. They click on your profile to see if anything has changed. They watch your stories, if they still can, searching for signs, clues, cracks in the wall you've built. Then the outreach begins, small at first. A vague message at 1 a.m., a song lyric dropped into your feed, a random comment on something unrelated, disguised as casual. But behind every gesture is the same hope, that you'll bite, that you'll react, that you'll pick up the old thread where they left it. And yet every time you don't reply, every time their bait goes untouched, the truth settles deeper. The old access is gone. The certainty they once felt about their place in your life is dissolving, and with it, the illusion of control. This is the moment where your discipline matters most, because your job is not to speed up this process. Your job is to hold the line. It's tempting to fill the gap with a response, to relieve your own discomfort by reaching out just enough to ease the tension, but that's where most people fail. They confuse the stillness with inaction, when in reality, stillness is the most active choice you can make. In Stoic thought, restraint is an act of power. Epictetus taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and by holding your silence, you allow the imagination on the other side to do its work. And time does what words never could. Words can be argued with, twisted, or forgotten. Time, on the other hand, leaves no room for negotiation. It builds a record that can't be rewritten. The longer you remain still, the more your absence takes shape in their mind. It stops being just a gap in their day and becomes a shadow that follows them everywhere. It creeps into their morning coffee, into their commute, into the quiet moments before they fall asleep. Eventually, they begin to realize the silence isn't temporary, that it's not a pause before the next round, but a statement in itself. And that's when the panic sets in. They replay everything, searching for where they lost you, hoping the timeline will give them a point of entry. But time is relentless. It doesn't just move forward, it carries you with it, farther away from where they left you. What's remarkable is that in holding the silence, you're not punishing them, you're preserving yourself. You're allowing the truth to unfold naturally without you forcing it into the open. You're letting the weight of time work in your favor, pressing down not to crush, but to clarify. And for them, that weight is unbearable precisely because they can't control it. They can't speed it up. They can't undo it. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require you to fight, explain, or even be present. Your absence does the speaking for you. And the longer it lasts, the more undeniable it becomes. You've stopped being a constant in their life, and constants, once gone, leave a vacuum nothing else can quite fill. By the time they fully understand what's happened, it's too late to undo the distance. The time you've spent away has not only weakened their hold, it's strengthened your own foundation. You've learned to live without the push and pull, without the constant need to respond. And in that space, you've found something far more valuable than their attention: your own peace. The psychological weight of time is not a weapon, it's a truth teller. It reveals what the noise once hid. It shows who really values the connection and who only valued the control. And when you let time do its work, you no longer have to explain the ending. The ending explains itself. And the real shift? It's not just that they feel the heaviness of your absence, it's that you no longer feel the need to return. The shadow may follow them, but you've stepped into the light. And once you see how much clearer life is from there, going back isn't even an option. The silence that began as discipline has become your natural state, and the weight they feel now is theirs to carry, not yours. Part 4. Choosing silence is choosing self-respect. Silence isn't punishment, it's protection. That's the part most people never understand until they've lived through it. In a world that constantly demands your reaction, your explanation, your energy, there's something deeply powerful about refusing to hand those things over. And yet so many men, especially those who pride themselves on being loyal, persistent and resilient, stay in draining cycles because they mistake persistence for strength. They think that fighting endlessly for someone's respect is a sign of honor, when in reality it's proof that they haven't yet claimed their own. You've been there before. You give your time freely. You pour your energy into fixing problems you didn't create. You hand over your attention to someone who only gives you chaos in return. And every time, you tell yourself it's worth it, that if you just keep showing up, if you just keep proving yourself, they'll finally value you the way you deserve. But here's the truth. Every time you beg for respect, you're teaching them one thing: your worth is negotiable. And once they know it's negotiable, they'll always try to bargain it down. Stoicism has a way of cutting through this illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When your thoughts are consumed with getting someone else to approve of you, you end up painting yourself in their colors, not your own. Real dignity comes from within, not from the applause or even the acceptance of someone else. And once you see that, you start to realize how much of your life you've been spending trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Picture a fortress with its gates wide open. Anyone can walk in. They can rearrange the furniture, take what they want, leave a mess behind, and you're left cleaning up, waiting for them to maybe say thank you before they leave again. Now imagine those gates closing, not slammed in rage, not barricaded in fear, but shut with quiet certainty. That's what happens when you choose silence from self-respect. You're not locking the world out, you're keeping your space safe for those who will honor it. This kind of silence isn't about proving a point. It's not about making someone wonder what's wrong or hoping they'll come chasing after you. It's about refusing to keep watering ground where nothing grows. It's about seeing your energy as something valuable, something sacred, and no longer giving it away to anyone who treats it like it's disposable. It's a calm, steady refusal, not a tantrum, not a test. And it's in this calm where the real shift happens. At first, you might feel the urge to break the silence, to send that one last message, to make them understand why you're pulling away. But that urge is just the old pattern trying to pull you back in. The beauty of Stoic discipline is learning that you don't need to announce your boundaries for them to exist. You don't need to explain to someone why you won't tolerate certain behaviors. You just stop tolerating them. Self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't have to be. It shows itself in the choices you make when no one's watching. It's in the way you hold your ground when someone tries to provoke you. It's in the way you no longer rush to fix a mess you didn't create. And over time, people notice. They might not say it, but they feel it. The shift in your energy, the change in how available you are, the way you now carry yourself. From that moment on, your silence becomes something different. It's no longer a gap in the conversation, it's a statement. A statement that says, my energy is no longer for sale. And here's the thing, once you reach that point, you don't go back. You can't. Because once you've tasted the peace that comes from not chasing people who undervalue you, from not fighting battles that drain you, you realize how much of your life was spent in emotional debt. And no one who's paid off that debt ever wants to be in it again. The ones who lose access to you will feel the difference. Some will try to guilt you into opening the gates again. Others will try to provoke you just to see if they can still get a reaction. But you'll see it all for what it is, an attempt to return to a version of you that no longer exists. That version of you, the one who confused endurance with self-worth, is gone. In its place is a man who knows that silence can be the most powerful form of self-respect there is. And here's where the connection deepens. Choosing silence isn't about cutting people out of your life. It's about cutting out the parts of yourself that kept you bound to the wrong people. It's about letting go of the need to convince, to prove, to negotiate for a place in someone's priorities. It's about recognizing that the kind of respect worth having is the kind you don't have to fight for. When you live this way, you stop seeing silence as empty. You start seeing it as space to breathe, to rebuild, to focus on the people and pursuits that actually nourish you. You understand that by not reacting, by not chasing, you're not losing anything, you're protecting everything that matters. So when you choose silence now, it's not because you're angry, it's because you're certain. You've learned that some things once given can never be reclaimed: time, energy, trust. And the only way to honor those things is to stop giving them to people who don't honor you back. From that point forward, silence is no longer absence, it's presence. Your presence in your own life, your own values, your own peace. It's a line drawn without a word, one that says clearly to anyone paying attention, I know my worth, and I will not spend it cheaply again. And the most powerful part? The moment you understand this, you stop wondering whether they'll respect you if you stay quiet. Because the truth is, the respect that matters most is the one you give yourself first. And when you hold on to that, no one can take it from you. Part 5. When silence becomes who you are. At first, silence feels like a tactic, something you try for a while to regain control, to steady yourself, to send a message. You think it's temporary, a pause before deciding what comes next. But somewhere along the way, it stops being a choice you make and starts becoming a part of you. Not as a mask, not as a game, but as a deeper truth about who you are now. The people who once knew how to get a rise out of you don't understand this shift. They think you're catching your breath before returning to the same old dance. What they don't see is that you've already stepped into a new life, and you have no intention of stepping back. In the early days, the pull to respond is strong. The phone buzzes and your hand twitches toward it before you even think. You catch yourself replaying old conversations in your head, wondering if one more explanation might finally make them understand. But every time you resist that pull, every time you choose stillness over reaction, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're building something. You're strengthening a new identity, one that no longer depends on external validation to feel complete. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And nothing reveals wasted time like the discipline of silence. You start to see just how much of your life has been poured into noise, arguments that led nowhere, explanations that fell on deaf ears, attempts to prove your worth to people who were never looking for proof in the first place. Silence strips all that away. It forces you to see where your energy has been going, and it invites you to reclaim it. There's a moment that changes everything. It doesn't come with fanfare or applause. It's quiet, almost unnoticeable to anyone but you. Before, one harsh text could ruin your day. One careless comment could send your mind into a spiral. But now, you read the same kind of message and feel nothing. No surge of anger, no sting of hurt, no compulsion to defend yourself. That's when you realize silence isn't just something you do. It's who you've become. And in that moment, you feel a kind of freedom you didn't know was possible. The people who used to hold sway over your emotions might call it indifference. They might think you're avoiding the issue or pretending not to care. But the truth is far different. You care deeply, just not in the way they want you to. You care about your peace more than their opinion. You care about your growth more than their approval. You care about living in alignment with your values more than winning an argument that never should have started. Living this way means you no longer measure your day by how others react to you. You stop checking to see if they've responded. You stop wondering if they've noticed your absence. Your peace is no longer tied to whether someone else decides to validate you. You wake up in the morning knowing you're already whole, and nothing they do or don't do can take that from you. It's not that challenges disappear. You'll still face moments that test your resolve. There will still be people who try to draw you back into the noise. But your relationship with those moments changes. You no longer enter them looking for resolution from the outside. You carry the resolution within you. You've learned that you can't control what they think, say, or do, but you can control whether it reaches you. And that's the essence of this transformation. Your calm is no longer a strategy to get them back. You're not sitting in silence to provoke curiosity, to make them miss you, or to win them over. Your calm is the foundation you stand on now, solid no matter who stays or goes. It's not about them anymore. It's about you, your clarity, your boundaries, your life. The beauty of this shift is that it doesn't require anyone else to understand it. You don't need their recognition for it to be real. You don't need them to agree that it's the right choice. You're not looking for permission or applause. This silence belongs to you, and it serves you in ways that words never could. From the outside, it might look like nothing has changed. You still walk into rooms, still smile, still carry on with your day. But inside, everything is different. The storms that used to throw you off course now pass by without shaking your ground. The voices that once dictated your mood now fade into the background. And the person you used to be, the one who reacted to every spark, is a stranger you no longer recognize. When silence becomes who you are, it's not about isolation or withdrawal. It's about presence. The kind of presence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to hand that over. You become a steady point in a world that thrives on chaos, and that steadiness is more powerful than any argument you could ever make. And here's the viral truth, the one that catches people off guard. When silence becomes you, the old ways of reaching you no longer work. The games lose their hold. The noise loses its power. And the people who once thrived on your reactions are left staring at a version of you they can't manipulate. That's the part they'll never be able to unsee. That's the moment they realize they've lost not just your voice, but the access they once had to your soul. You've stepped into a life where your peace is the prize, and nothing you left behind is worth trading it for. And when you live like that, you stop needing to announce the change. The change speaks for itself. Part 6. The final message without a word. The strongest no you will ever give is the one you never have to say. It's the kind of refusal that doesn't come in the form of an argument, a carefully crafted text, or a final speech. It's the kind that arrives in stillness, no explanations, no follow-up, no invitation for a counterpoint. Those who underestimated you always thought your silence was a sign of weakness. They convinced themselves you'd always return, that this was just another round in a familiar game. But this time, there is no return, not because you're bitter or angry, but because you've become complete without them. Epictetus taught, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And nothing is further beyond your control than another person's understanding, their apology, or their recognition. You could wait a lifetime for those things and still never receive them. But your silence says you no longer seek them. You no longer measure your worth by whether they see it. You've chosen to stop holding your life hostage while you wait for someone else to give you closure. And yet, on the other side, the absence begins to burn. They scroll through old messages, revisiting words they once skimmed past without thought. They search for the moment they lost you, combing through memories for clues, convincing themselves that if they can just find the turning point, they can undo it. But they can't, because the truth is, there is no way back, not to who you were. That version of you, the one who tolerated too much, explained too often, and returned too easily, is gone. This is where silence transforms into the most honest closure you can give yourself. You're not closing the door to punish them. You're closing it because keeping it open costs too much. Every day you keep it ajar is another day you let them live rent-free in your mind, another day you delay your own healing. Silence ends that lease. It hands you the keys to your own peace and tells you it's time to move forward. The beauty of this choice is its simplicity. You don't need them to understand why you've gone quiet. You don't need them to agree with your decision. You don't need to justify the fact that you're no longer available to play the role they wrote for you. Your absence speaks for you. It says the only message that truly matters: I've changed. I no longer live where you left me, and I don't need you to validate it. And here's the part that leaves the deepest mark. They will come to understand this in their own time, whether you explain it or not. Because silence has a way of making people hear the echoes of everything they ignored. And by the time they realize it, your life will have moved so far forward that their understanding will no longer matter. That's the final message. And it doesn't need a single word. Men, everything I've shared with you here is not about my story. It's about principles tested in the real world, for men who want to reclaim their place as the author of their own lives. We've walked through the entire journey together, understanding the deep power of silence, breaking the cycles they've relied on, letting time work in your favor, making silence part of who you are, and delivering the final message without ever speaking a word. Here's the core truth. When you stop reacting to the expectations of others, you don't just remove their control, you reclaim your own. Your silence stops being a tactic to teach them a lesson and becomes the guardrail that protects your value, your peace, and your direction. It's a quiet but unshakable declaration. I no longer live where you left me. The world will always test you, always try to push the same buttons, but you no longer have to answer every signal. When you learn to choose your responses with purpose, not out of habit, you start leading your life on your terms. And when your silence comes from certainty instead of fear, you're building something they can't break, your self-respect. This isn't retreat, it's advancement. It's the step forward of a man who knows his worth and refuses to trade it for chaos. When you live this way, the games lose their power, the noise fades, and your focus sharpens on what truly matters. That's when you realize the most important respect you'll ever receive doesn't come from them. It comes from you. Hold that line, because when you hold it, you've already won before the fight even begins. If this message grounded you, then like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. But listen, don't stop here. The next step in your journey is right there on your screen. Click it now. Keep moving forward. Your transformation is waiting, but it won't wait forever.